Hello, and welcome back to regular viewers, and a big welcome to new visitors to the Tyre and Rubber Recycling podcasts. In Tyre and Rubber Recycling podcast episode 66, we're talking to Trevor Bayley from Green Distillation Technology in Australia. GDT will be a familiar name to anyone following the pyrolysis sector, as the company has fought an uphill struggle leapfrogging changes in Australian legislation for the past 12 years. Finally, GTD has managed to come to an agreement that would fit with the current Australian legislation, and the development of the project at its Warren, New South Wales plant is now underway. So we're going to have a chat with the man behind the project, Trevor Bayley, and get the latest update on where the project stands today. Before we do, though, if you like Tyre and Rubber Recycling podcasts, please click on the like and subscribe buttons below. And don't forget that you can follow Tyre and Rubber Recycling by subscribing to the magazine, either digital or in print. And you can follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, WhatsApp, and X. Okay, Trevor, thank you very much for joining us today at Tyre and Rubber Recycling for the podcast.
My pleasure.
Now, we've read the background that you sent us across, and I understand that GDT is pyrolysing or treating whole tyres. Yeah?
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah. So when you're treating whole tyres, what is the main output that you're looking for from this?
When the guy who developed our technology was from the oil industry, so his focus was on a higher quality oil. So that's been our focus, if you like, from day one, is to get a better quality oil than is traditionally recovered from tyre pyrolysis.
Right. Now the market for oil is, I think, greater in your side of the world than it is in ours. The focus in Europe tends to be sort of more or less 50-50 oil and recovered carbon black. So what are you doing with the char that you get from your process?
That's a work in progress, Ewan, as it is for most of our fellow pyrolysers. We call it recovered carbon black, which to my way of thinking is a little bit of a misnomer, because if you presume that they put 15% by weight of carbon black into a tyre and we get 40-odd% back out, then it's a little bit difficult to presume that it's only the carbon that went in the first place. So obviously this carbon comes from somewhere else. And as we have learned over the last 10 years, carbon isn't carbon. It's all different. And to a great extent, you get out what you put in. So every tyre manufacturer uses different compounds. Even within their own range of tyres, they use different compounds. So we get quite a varied product, both in the carbon and the oil, to a degree.
Yeah. So the oil that you get will go to a refinery, I presume. Yeah.
Yep, that's the holy grail. Yeah.
So the guys at the refineries, the technicians at the refineries, they know what they're doing. They know how to process it. They can turn your, for want of a better word, your tyre pyrolysis oil into something or several things that have a higher value.
Yep.
So they can make the sustainable carbon blacks from it. They can get fuel from it. They can use it as a chemical resource for the textile industry. There's any number of things they can do with it. With the char, and it is, I'm calling it char.
I noticed. Won't get you a job in the industry, Ewan.
I do sometimes drop into the recovered carbon black mode because it's easier. especially when I'm talking to somebody who calls it recovered carbon black.
Yeah, yeah,
But that is, as we know, is a bit of a misnomer because, as you say, there's more comes out than goes in,
yeah,
and it also contains so many impurities and ash and so on. So
yeah.
that in itself needs a dealing with in a secondary process. I,
Yep.
I don't think, I might be wrong, but I don't think there's anybody producing a direct recovered carbon black. It always has to have that post processing, if you like.
Ah, well,
Okay.
obviously you shouldn't believe all you read. There are people claiming it's going straight into rubber or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. I must admit, I think we've had some rubber products from India that might have had something that went straight in. We couldn't keep them in the house.
No
So
comment.
you've um, you've had some legislative hurdles to cross. Do you think
Yeah,
that's the end of them?
it's been an interesting journey, that's for sure. And Australia being where Australia is and what its in industrial landscape looks like, then perhaps we've suffered more than others in that regard. We don't have the lobbying power, etc. And we don't have a rubber industry to speak of, and we have no tire manufacturers. So all those things counted against us to a degree. And the interpretation of pyrolysis by the authorities has not been favourable. So they've tended to look at our side of the world where less sophisticated processes are developed and sold at a very low price. And that lower sophistication and lower price brings with it environmental issues and health issues, which have caused a jaundiced view of what pyrolysis can and does do.
Yeah,
And
I don't think you're alone in that. That is something that impacts everywhere.
yes, I was talking to a professor a long time ago when we first started, and he said the same thing. He said the trouble is pyrolysis is a single word with perhaps 100 different applications. Now, what we've got to try and do somewhere along the line, what maybe the industry has got to try and do as well, is identify which one of those 100 different processes we are when we're dealing with tyres and change the name. I mean, nomenclature has a big impact on where you go in legislation. For another example, what happened was they made tyres a legislated or a scheduled waste. And then they decided that the treatment of a scheduled waste with heat should be classified as energy from waste. And the energy is another misnomer because by energy, they mean electricity. They don't mean energy at all. And so pyrolysis is a heat treatment. Whichever one of the 100 processes it is, it's still a heat treatment. So automatically we fell into the energy from waste bin. And the small print said 75% of the energy you produce has to go into the grid, which is a little difficult with a char and an oil.
Yeah, yeah.
Unless you have a tertiary process, of course, when you put it into a generator. So there was a misunderstanding that what we were doing was burning the tyres. So it was more like TDF than actually doing anything with it. So all those things were put up as a policy, and a policy is not a law. It's just part of the act which describes how waste should be treated. And policies take 2 or 3 years to write and 5 or 6 years to rewrite. So once the thing was written and enacted, we were in a cleft stick. And so we had to go round and round in circles for a while, both sides. And, there was goodwill on both sides, but ultimately we had to put our foot down with a firm hand and they came to the party. So whilst we were not allowed, for a period of time, we were not allowed to expand, but we were allowed to continue operation.
Okay, so what now? What are your next steps?
Well, now when this all happened, we were in the throes of building our first commercial plant. So a commercial plant comprises 6 modules. Each module has 2 reactors. We built the first one and we had a considerable portion of the next 2 on site. That went on hold. We were allowed to operate the single unit, but of course it's not economically viable to do so. So we just tread water for a while. And during that time, of course, we lost a lot of credibility in the financial markets. And so when the curtain was lifted and we were allowed to continue, it was very difficult for us to raise the funding necessary to get to the next step. Times have changed. Your industry has helped. There's a lot more publicity about tyres and tyre recycling. There's a lot more positive attitude around the world. There's a lot more concern about what happens in this field. So gradually we got some interest. We got some international interest and we got some local interest. In the end, we chose to go with the local interest, and we received sufficient capital injection to get Warren to their first plant to the next stage, which is 50% operating capacity. So we've started on that journey. We've ordered the parts. We should be fully operational at 50% by the end of this year, very early next year. And subsequent to that, or not quite in parallel, we'll start ordering the other bits for the remaining 3 modules. So theoretically, this time next year, we should have 1 plant fully operational, and the second plant, for which we have land and permits already in Queensland, should be beginning construction.
Okay. Now, over the years, I understand you've had a level of interest from other players in the USA, for example.
Yep.
Is this likely to help them progress development in their markets?
Well, yeah, it's the oldest story in the book. You get this one operating and we'll be in there to develop it. And so when we generated that interest, we were 4 months away from being able to demonstrate a 24/7 operation. That's taken all this time. And now, of course, the same people are saying, okay, well, we've only got to wait till the end of the year, and you're at the capacity you said you would be 5 years ago. So let's wait till then and we'll make a decision. I'm not saying it will happen, but and not with the same people. We're getting inquiries all the time, and it's not always from the same people.
Okay, it's good news to hear that after all these years, you're finally getting somewhere. I occasionally hear tidbits from Australia, from other people who have their fingers in the pie, not necessarily in Australia, about the good and the bad. And I think it's positive that you guys have finally got to the stage where you're getting close to being up and running and having a commercial plant, because the more positive news we've got from people using modern developed technology, I think helps combat that legacy image of burning tyres, as it were.
Yes, that's right.
I mean, even here in Europe, as soon as the term pyrolysis, tyre pyrolysis comes up, the local people around, they lobby against it without even knowing what it is.
Ah, okay.
We had a proposed plant locally, and they'd only put in, they'd made their initial planning application, and within days there were over 1,000 signatories against it, and they hadn't stated what the technology was going to be. We have an environmental lobby and a not in my backyard lobby that doesn't know what it's talking about. And I mean, I wouldn't particularly want one over the fence from my back garden, but I wouldn't object to one in the neighbourhood. I'd rather have a properly functioning pyrolysis plant than a landfill.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all power to you guys for getting here after what, 14, 15 years.
We started in late 2009 with what I call the Potter's Kiln, the desktop model. And we became a public unlisted company in 2012. So it's 12 years we've been serious. Yeah.
Thank you, Trevor Bayley, for your time speaking with Tyre and Rubber Recycling. And we hope that we can look forward to hearing more from GDT in the future. If anything, the GDT story shows that conviction to the project and the determination not to be overwhelmed by legislators who may not have the full grasp of the technology will bring a positive outcome when you persevere. We'll look forward to more positive news when the Warren plant is up to capacity. In the meantime, thanks for watching, look after yourselves, and we'll see you for podcast 67.